Presidents Trump and Xi are now supposed to be getting a room.
Get a room at the two of them, really, really hoping that they would, and that some kind of romantic deal could be struck, or to do some kind of deal, Difficult question to answer. It's going to take enormous bruising if it goes up against the US blow for blow. We can continue to just pump endless credit into the economy, build bridges to nowhere, dig holes in the ground, fill them in again, build world trade centers left, right and center to keep people employed. That's a trick it's been relying on for years and years anyway.
How sick do you think the Chinese economy is? Is it?
So if they say that GDP is going to be 6%, GDP will be 6%. You can always make it 6% by just building another couple of hundred skyscrapers that no one wants to live in. It's not difficult to do that. But there's a lot of very straight line forecasting coming from Australian economists who really don't understand China at all, other than that you've made money for gangbusters for years and therefore you think it will continue forever. But very few things in life do.
Okay, this definitely deserves a video on its own, if I haven't whet your appetite enough with those short clips. This man is my next favorite mainstream financial guy. But before we play the rest of it, I just want to apologize for this video and its quality, especially the audio, as my primary recording software has been having problems for a few days, including the last video, which is why I just couldn't talk or couldn't record it properly. It's one of those where the test works. Once you try to do video like 4 times, it just didn't work. And then when I uploaded it into YouTube, which also never happened, YouTube had a problem, completely independently had a problem, so I had to re-upload it. So I just wanted to get it out, and I hope you forgive me. So once again, this video and audio is not that good as far as the video audio quality, but the content is mind-blowing. Needless to say, I loved it. So without further ado, here we go.
Well, as we've heard, it's trade tensions that will dominate the G20 summit this weekend. But all eyes will be on a backroom meeting between US President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping, with hopes of a truce in the simmering trade war. But is the trade war just a distraction, and the weak Chinese economy what Australia should really be focused on? Long-time China watcher Michael Every is the head of financial research for Asia Pacific for Rabobank, and I spoke to him from Bangkok. Michael Every, Presidents Trump and Xi are now supposed to be getting a room after the G20. Is this going to be a battle of face saving for the two of them?
Well, it is, because in the business community and the financial markets for months and months, the majority of analysts have been shouting, get a room at the two of them, really, really hoping that they would, and that some kind of romantic deal could be struck, which would save us all from the kind of economic downside risks that a trade war would present. The problem is, how exactly is President Trump in particular going to manage to sell this deal if we do see it struck, when he's been so aggressive in his rhetoric up until now? Because from the Chinese side, it's easy. They want the tariffs to go away. That's certainly very good for their economy if it does happen. From the American side, what can they show in concrete terms, excuse me, that China has brought to the table that's an improvement on where we were a while ago? What victory can they bring in order to reduce the tariffs that are currently in place, or to do some kind of deal? Difficult question to answer.
Taking a look at the Chinese economy, you recently wrote that this is an economy with a staggering level of debt that's growing at a pace eclipsing that of the US, with lower profitability, has combined fiscal deficit near double digits, even while GDP is apparently growing at 6.5%, as the government says it is. And you also say, quote, it has a lunatic property bubble. This isn't an economy that sounds like it can go toe-to-toe in a trade war with the US.
Well, it can and it can't. It's going to take enormous bruising if it goes up against the US blow for blow, which is what we are moving towards at the moment, even if perhaps we're going to see a temporary timeout in this boxing match in international terms. China, because it's a state-run economy, can continue to just pump endless credit into the economy, build bridges to nowhere, dig holes in the ground, fill them in again, build world trade centers left, right and center to keep people employed. That's a trick it's been relying on for years and years anyway. It can continue to do that. But if the US is going to aggressively pursue it and cut off export channels from China to the West, and the US in particular, and as I said, cut off that dollar flow back from the US and international capital markets to China. Were that to occur, and this is not my short-term forecast, I'm merely indicating logically this may be where we may end up. Were that to occur, then absolutely the Chinese economy is not able to ride this out in the current format it has today. It would involve significant pain and significant changes which would affect everybody, including Australia.
While the G20 has been really captivating the headlines in this trade war issue, you're much more concerned about a US judge who's found that 3 Chinese, potentially state-owned banks have been in contempt of North Korean sanctions. Why is this such a big deal to you? Because no one else is really talking about it.
Well, you have to join the dots here. The Chinese are arguing that it's client confidentiality and they shouldn't be handing over information to US regulators. The US regulators are saying, hey, you're doing business in the US and you're doing business in US dollars internationally, and we suspect you of having busted sanctions on North Korea. Now, if they find them in contempt and they are proceeding with that, basically what happens next is either the Attorney General or the US Treasury Secretary can really bring the mallet swinging down on these particular banks and at worst say you can't do business in the US or can't do business in US dollars anymore. Now, one of the banks is quite large, 2 of them are, medium sized, but what we see here is a pattern that the US is saying to Chinese banks who are deeply enmeshed into the US financial system, obviously, and the US dollar international system, if you don't jump when we say jump, if you don't say how high when we say jump, then we can cut you off from the US financial system, and we can cut you off from the US dollar. And that absolutely destroys their ability to do business internationally. And it's a very short, sharp shock, and it's a much tougher divorce than a 25% tariff on furniture or shoes or electronics products or whatever you might be thinking about. It's a much, much bigger systemic shock, potentially, to the global economy and financial markets.
How sick do you think the Chinese economy is? Is it particularly weak, do you think? Particularly as Australia, or Australians, how worried do we need to be about, our key export buyer?
Well, look, you should be worried. It's as simple as that. The figures are not a prediction. It's very kind of you to say they're a prediction. They're a target. They're an order. So if they say that GDP is going to be 6%, GDP will be 6%. You can always make it 6% by just building another couple of hundred skyscrapers that no one wants to live in. It's not difficult to do that if you've basically got GDP as an output target rather than a reflection of supply and demand balancing, which is what it is in the Australian economy. Australia's exports to China are already under pressure in some areas. We know there's been a hoo-ha over coal. And luckily, your excellent food and agri products are still flowing there in big numbers and still commanding a real premium, and long may that continue. But if you look at the underlying stresses and strains that are building up, not just internally, not just financially, but internationally between the US and China, and what the implications are of that for the Chinese currency, well, yeah, you have to say that the longer out you look, the more nervous you should be getting rather than more confident. But there's a lot of very straight-line forecasting coming from Australian economists who really don't understand China at all, other than that you've made money for gangbusters for years, and therefore you think it will continue forever. But very few things in life do.
OMG is all I can say. OMG. This man better not step on the mainland China because he's going to be shot. Seems so correct about everything that's going on in China, everything that we know. Unfortunately, what he might be correct about, but he didn't spell it out, there's going to be a boxing match. There is already, economically, but I think that every economical boxing match is followed by a hot war. Now, if you think there can't be a next war between the United States and China, because they've got nuclear weapons. Look it up. Nuclear weapons may not be what they tell us they are. It's getting into conspiracy realm. So I'm going to stop it there, and I'm just going to say there are high-powered, high-yielding weapons and missiles and all that sort of stuff. Of course, we all know. As far as the nuclear weapons, they can have a conventional war, unfortunately. Because United States hold this SWIFT system, which is the international financial system, and China without US dollars cannot buy many things around the world because US dollars are only, most of the trade is done in US dollars, and the rest of the world don't have confidence in China that they're going to come good as far as the currency goes, because if Chinese buy a lot of things from the world and pay it in their yuan, and then they inflate their currency, so all the countries holding yuan will have their currency that is worthless because it's been inflated. So they have to stick with the United States-based financial system, and that's what is currently going on, is that United States and the rest of the world, the financial centers, so London, but definitely United States, are choking China financially. I know I didn't end it there on a positive note. However, I hope you are well. We'll talk again next time, and take care.